Good morning. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Jack McDougall, and I'm President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. The Board of Trade has now hosted more than 20 of these virtual briefings for our members and our partners across the region since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's providing us with significant opportunities to share really important insights and key learnings as we all navigate this new world that we've all entered into. I'm especially pleased that 90% of our member organizations have participated in one or more of these briefings, which is a really strong sign of engagement and ongoing value-added activities. Colleges and universities in our region have and continue to play a really important role in our economy and our communities, and they're at the very heart of everything affecting us: public health, economic transformation, and racial equity. We look forward to learning more about how these colleges and universities are adapting in these unique and extremely challenging times. We are very fortunate to have with our panel today Ann Kress, President, Northern Virginia Community College; Paul Almeida, Dean of the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown University; and Darryll Pines, President of the University of Maryland, and we will hear from him shortly. Dr. Pines, we're extremely pleased to have you with us here today as you settle into your new role. Certainly an interesting time to be starting a new position, and I'm sure at this point you've got everything figured out, as do the rest of us. I'd also like to thank our moderator and welcome Dr. Ron Mason, President of the University of the District of Columbia. Ron, he's been in this current role now for 5 years, and he's the 9th president of UDC. His reputation for strong leadership and responsible governance is bolstered by more than 30 years of experience in the fields of higher education, community development, and law. Ron, I'm really pleased to have you joining us today, so thank you very much, and thank you to all of our panelists. If you have any questions during the discussion, please use the Q&A box, and we will get to those after some brief presentations. And now I'll turn it over to Ron to get us started. Ron?
Good morning. I'm Ronald Mason, President of the University of the District of Columbia. Our lives changed in March 2020. Overnight, terms like social distancing, face coverings, and hand washing became part of our everyday conversation. Such terms have heightened significance in the world of higher education. Universities are by definition places of social gathering, engaged conversation, and perpetual motion. But in March 2020, campuses went silent. Students were advised not to return from spring break, and emergency remote instructional delivery became the norm. Commencements were virtual, and planning for fall 2020 became an exercise fraught with many unknown variables. Here today, we have 4 institutions of higher learning to share their perspective on the future of higher education in the DMV. Though they vary in type and size, they share common concerns. The first concern is resources. State institutions are impacted to varying degrees by government budgets, which have been impacted by the virus. Private and public institutions are impacted by the level and availability of federal support. The impact of the virus on enrollment and thus tuition revenue and housing revenue is also in question. The second concern is the necessity of remote instructional delivery and issues of faculty and student adaptability, the effectiveness of academic and personal support services, management of required face-to-face instruction, such as in labs, and the ability to recreate some semblance of a campus experience in a remote or hybrid format. The third common concern is the equity issue of access to connectivity and devices. Many students were able to negotiate such challenges by using on-campus libraries and computer labs. How will the extent of the digital divide be identified, and once identified, bridged, and at what cost? Finally, there is the unknown related to the virus itself. What will the world, the nation, the DMV look like in the fall? Will low-density campus and dormitory occupancy be possible, and for how long? In the district, for example, over 80,000 students enroll in higher education, and the vast majority come from outside of the district, many from foreign countries. Who will be allowed to or choose to travel here? Who will have to be quarantined, and for how long? Can 20-somethings adapt their behavior in ways that minimize exposure to and the spread of the virus? If there is an outbreak in one part of the campus, how will it be managed? Under what circumstances will closure be required? These are the shared concerns in the higher education sector but the responses may vary depending on the type and location of institution. Thus, the topic for today's discussion. But before handing the conversation over to our panel, I've been asked to provide information specific to the University of the District of Columbia. The best way to understand who we are and the role that we serve is to know that we are the only public university in the district. As such, we are, in effect, the entire state university system under one accreditation umbrella. We provide workforce training free to every district resident and academic degrees up to the Ph.D. and Juris Doctor. We enroll about 4,500 students in academic programs and 2,000 in workforce programs annually. Over 60% of our students come directly from DC public and public charter schools. More than 50% of our operating budget is supported by district appropriations. Because of that, we offer quality programs at an affordable price. Our business school and mechanical engineering program, for example, were ranked #1 best affordable in the country by affordableschools.net. We have been implementing our equity imperative strategic plan for the last 3 years to recover from the lingering effects of draconian control board budget cuts in the late 90s and to transform UDC into a modern producer of industry-ready talent. Just to get a commercial in, you can read all about it at udc.edu. I mention these things because the work that we have been engaged in has positioned us to respond well to the current challenges. District investment in our strategic plan has enabled us to upgrade and modernize our technology infrastructure. We have certified all full-time and most adjunct faculty to develop online content and deliver it remotely. We recently acquired almost 400,000 square feet of facility space, one to house workforce training in DC's Ward 8. Another, we are retrofitting as a low health risk learning center on Connecticut Avenue with individual desktop equipped learning pods and digital projection studios for students, faculty, or staff with connectivity or device challenges. We decided in April that remote delivery would be our default mode of operation for the fall 2020. Access to campuses will be by appointment only. There will be limited points of entry and exit, one-directional walkways, and enhanced personal and space cleaning protocols. Masks will be required. We are comfortable with this approach because based on 2 surveys with high response levels, we learned that our transition to the current new normal, though not without its challenges, was managed well by faculty, staff, and students in the spring. And we have put much energy into improving on that effort come fall. Our resources, while an ongoing challenge for historical reasons mentioned above, will be more or less stable next fiscal year. There will be no increase and the cuts are manageable with hiring freezes. We were able to provide $1.8 million of federal CARES relief to our students who are eligible for federal financial aid. We also made available over $500,000 for students through private donations and institutional funds. We will be able to cover COVID-related expenses of up to $9.5 million with federal support. However, there is one resource challenge worth noting. Our strategic plan includes the construction of competency-based seamless talent production pipelines from workforce certificates through associate degrees to bachelor's and above with multiple credentials and on and off ramps along the way. For example, a student may start as a nurse assistant and ultimately earn a BS in nursing according to his or her own plan, timetable, or intermediate career goals, or begin in coding and end up as an electrical engineer. Our pre-COVID budget recommended by the mayor included funds to prioritize 3 such pipelines: healthcare, technology, and teacher preparation, perhaps the 3 most important talent pipelines required for our economy to recover. Unfortunately, that funding was removed as part of the balancing of the overall budget of the district. Now let me once again introduce our panel. Dr. Ann M. Kress, President, Northern Virginia Community College. Dr. Paul Almeida, Dean of the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown University, and Dr. Darryll J. Pines, President of the University of Maryland. Each will take around 5 minutes to provide specific information on their institution and fall 2020 reopening plans. We will begin with Paul and be followed by Ann and then Darryll. Paul, the floor is yours. Paul,
Yeah.
go.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. And thank you everyone for being here. As Dr. Mason said, each of our schools faces many of the same challenges, but we have unique histories and character. And so we face some additional challenges because of our uniqueness as well. And again, as Dr. Mason said, the situation is a dynamic one. And our plans are adjusted depending on the public health situation in our city and our country. So this is an interesting time to run a school or a university, and it's an exciting time as well. So Georgetown's plans in general, as of now, are to welcome all our freshmen to campus. Now, freshmen obviously need special time. It's an important experience for them when they leave their homes and come to campus. So we wanted them to be with us so we can look after them, bring them into the school and to the university in the best possible way. And we're also inviting upper class undergraduates whose personal or family situation makes it impossible or impractical to complete their studies at their permanent addresses. We're also inviting graduate students back, and they will have hybrid format. There will be some on-campus classes and some virtual classes. Most of our faculty will teach in person, though some will teach virtually as well. And we're bringing in a small percentage of our staff, as needed, because we realize it's important to minimize campus density. Of course, like my colleagues, we have the full range of protective measures. Masks will need to be worn on campus, hand sanitizers, symptom checks, testing. And this, as Dr. Mason said, is quite, plexiglass, professors teaching in properly spaced classrooms, lots of interesting challenges that we never thought of before. Now, we plan the on-campus classes will end before Thanksgiving on November 20th. And after that, the rest of the semester will continue online. So the students have a chance to come in once and leave once. We know that it's really important. The learning is obviously important, but the student experience is very important. So we're working on a range of activities, co-curricular and extracurricular, so that the students, even though they have to maintain physical distance, they can participate, learn, and evolve like they usually do. Of course, our schools have many things in common. I just want to emphasize a few things that might be a little different about Georgetown. First, Georgetown is really well known globally. So we have a large number of international students, not just from India and China, but Latin America, Middle East, Europe. And as you probably know, there are restrictions to visas and restrictions to travel. So these present some extra challenges. Another thing very unique about Georgetown and the McDonough School business is all our students participate in some global experience during their degree. So they go abroad and they do consulting work for a social organization or a business organization, and they come back. This is obviously a challenging thing now since we can't travel. How do we recreate this rich global part of every Georgetown student's experience? We also draw a lot of our students from some of the states which are having hotspots now, like Texas and Florida and California. And there may be requirements that when they come in, they'll have to quarantine for 14 days. We have to deal with that. And I think something really special, besides being a private school, is our Jesuit character. We are a Catholic and Jesuit organization. A part of the Jesuits are nearly 500 years old, have over 100 universities and colleges all around the world. And they've been dedicated to education and what we call cura personalis, the care for the whole person. So one of our biggest challenges is how do we, in this largely virtual environment, how do we in the socially distanced environment really show a deep care for our students and the whole person? How do they grow as people, as human beings? How do they, as we always say, become the best people in the world and the best people for the world? So I think this is a wonderfully challenging time. We have an opportunity to innovate. We have an opportunity to create an even better and stronger Georgetown and other universities. And we have to at the same time align with the new normal or whatever the dynamic future holds. So this is both challenging and exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Ann, I think you're up next.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. So I'm Ann Kress. I'm the president of Northern Virginia Community College. I did start on January 6th, so I got to spend a few weeks in this lovely office before I spent a couple months in my apartment in Arlington. But we are, if you don't know about Northern Virginia Community College, we call ourselves NOVA. And so NOVA serves 4 counties across Northern Virginia: Fairfax, Arlington, Prince William, and Loudoun, as well as some municipalities like Alexandria and Manassas. And when we look at our students, we serve about 70,000 students across 6 campuses. So we're a very large institution. And we released our plans for fall to our college community on June 8th. We are largely remote for fall 20, but as a comprehensive community college, we also have a number of hands-on programs that are really critical to all of our health and wellness and also to our community in terms of the trades and various technology programs. So one of the things we've been able to do this summer is actually bring back some of our students who were in, for example, dental hygiene or vet tech or welding or some of our nursing clinicals, where when we went to remote, those were courses that really stopped in their tracks. Unlike everything else that we could flip in the middle of March to distance learning, some of these programs are very much hands-on. And if they're not able to move forward, it's not really a great benefit to any of us. So we're really delighted that since Virginia has moved into phase 3, we've been able to bring those students back. And I met with some of them yesterday at our medical education campus. And it was interesting to hear one of our dental hygiene students say how happy she was to be back in our clinic on campus, because she said, I can't imagine telling a patient, well, it's okay, I learned how to do this on YouTube. So that is, I think, one of the challenges different educational types face, is that there is a component of all of our learning that no matter how sophisticated our remote abilities, we really do need students on our campus to participate in. And when I say no matter how robust our abilities, NOVA's been doing some form of distance education for 40 years, going all the way back to correspondence school. And just in case you don't realize, NOVA is actually the backbone for 19 of the 23 Virginia Community College system colleges in terms of their online delivery mechanisms. So it's something that we do very well. It's something that our faculty are trained in, but even our best trained faculty will tell you that there are just some disciplines where getting back on campus is going to be critical going forward. So when we look at our shift to remote and some of the unique challenges I think we face, part of that has to do with the students that NOVA serves, right? The students that we serve, they may look very similar, for example, to the students at the University of District of Columbia, but maybe less so from other institutions. And that when we did a survey, actually in January, pre-pandemic, of our students, we found that 40% of, or 50% of them actually suffered from basic needs insecurity. So they were housing insecure, they were food insecure. Those are challenges that have only grown since the pandemic, because many of our students who were employed in the very sectors that shed workers very, very quickly, right? Retail, hospitality, personal services. So they were very financially challenged and continue to be so. So that's an overriding concern for us. And how do we serve our students? We turned our parking lots into Wi-Fi hotspots. As we look toward our fall plans and what we do bring back to campuses, we're trying to bring back, for example, some computer labs, some access on campus for students to bring their own devices and use our Wi-Fi. We've discovered that even in Northern Virginia, with the ubiquity of broadband, the cost is a real challenge for our students. And so I think one of the things that we're thinking about very critically going forward is that digital divide, that even in a place of plenty, we have many neighborhoods that the Health Foundation has called islands of disadvantage. And it's something that we've been particularly concerned about during the pandemic. Just a few other things that I would note is that we also are a strong workforce provider for the region, and many of those courses also stopped in their tracks. So we're looking forward to, fingers crossed, Northern Virginia staying in phase 3 so that we are able to bring back students in programs in information technology, in some of our healthcare programs, so that we can connect some of those dislocated workers to new career pathways. Recognizing that opportunity is here in our region, but it may not come back in some of those sectors for some time. And then the last thing I'll mention is that when we look to fall, we see a lot of students still sitting on the sidelines trying to understand in this world of uncertainty how they should make decisions. And I think that's not unique to Nova. You probably see that across all of higher education. And so we know that affordability and accessibility are going to be very key for students. And that's something that we're looking at as well. Our formal plan, our Return to Nova plan, has been accepted by the State Council on Higher Education in Virginia. So we're excited about that. Like many other colleges, we have a Return to Campus pledge, a community partnership pledge to help folks understand how their personal responsibility intersects with our ability to reopen. But with that, we are very much looking forward to the start of our classes on August 24th and welcoming probably about 20% of our students back to campus in those hands-on delivery mechanisms. And with that, I'll stop talking and turn it over to President Pines.
President Pines.
Good morning, everyone. Darryll Pines, the new president, similar to Ann. I was announced on February 14th, which happens to be Valentine's Day. It was a beautiful day that day. And during that time period, there was, of course, the emergence of the pandemic, but we didn't have the other second pandemic, which was the social unrest in our country, which has really brought us into this really dynamic and uncertain time period that we all face, both in our community and society, but of course on our campuses. The University of Maryland College Park is in fact the flagship campus of the University of Maryland system, which has 11 institutions. Our total enrollment is about 40 to 41,000 students, which is about 11,000 graduate students and about 30,000 undergraduate students. We are the largest comprehensive four-year and research public flagship institution in the DMV region. 65% of our graduates work in the DMV region, Northern Virginia, the District of Columbia, and of course, the state of Maryland. We're proud of that because our graduates go into many of the workforces jobs that are in the region that are technology-based, non-technology-based, and many of the firms that are on this call, our students work for you. And we're very proud of that contribution that they do for many of your businesses. The University of Maryland, as being part of the university system of Maryland, has to follow the guidance that comes from the state of Maryland, or initially which comes from the federal government. We all have to follow the Opening in America plan that came from President Trump. And then in the state of Maryland, there was something that was called Maryland Strong, produced by Governor Hogan as a process and a methodology and approach for rephasing in various levels of our society, and that include higher education. And so once those plans were established, and those plans, by the way, were established in April, like many plans across the United States, then the University System of Maryland convened a task force, a COVID-19 task force that involved a number of university presidents. I happen to be a part of the task force that helped define the framework upon how the different institutions would develop their reopening plans for the fall. And then the University of Maryland the institution that I represent, which I started on July 1st, even though it was announced on February 14th, we had developed our plan that was delivered to the University System Chancellor by May 22nd. But I just want to walk folks back to the timeline. We are all part of this timeline. So just to give you, just so you don't forget what happened to the United States. So in our university on January 29th, we had our very first knowledge of the coronavirus in China through our study abroad programs. I think all of us have, in some sense, some study abroad programs. That immediately was canceled, and we brought our entire 100+ students who happened to be in China and Asia broadly back to the United States and back to our campus to protect them. Then that led to the entire cancellation of our study abroad programs across all countries, Italy, Spain, as the virus spread into Europe, and then into South America and other places. So that entire study abroad program was canceled at the University of Maryland on February 29th. And then obviously we all went into a different form of spring break. And for the first time in the history of our university, we went fully online post spring break. And most schools can say this, that it would have taken an act from God to move faculty 100% online in normal times. And we had to do it. We all had no choice to continue our curriculum and to continue educating our students. But now that we've had time, as Ann and Paul have mentioned and Rod had mentioned, is that we've been working feverishly on trying to develop these reopening plans for our university. And there are various different versions and strategies to move forward. Most of us have worked towards truly de-densifying our campuses to prevent and mitigate the risks associated with COVID-19. In the case of the University of Maryland, we have de-densified our dormitories. We have a dormitory environment that typically houses about 10 to 11,000 students. We will be half of that at sort of 48, 50%, which means that most of the dormitory environments will have single unit occupancy with a few two-person occupancy that is really students forming a social contract with their families and with each other to ensure that they don't spread the virus around. And then as it relates to our hybrid model for on campus, clearly there's anything from 100% in person to 100% online. And most of us are somewhere in between. So we like to have chosen for University of Maryland College Park is a hybrid model. So it involves some in person, some blended learning, and the majority online. So about 20% of our courses will be in person, a mixture of in person and blended, and then the other 80% will definitely be online. But we are going to try to open the physical campus. Our methodology and and we'll be guided by Prince George's County Department of Health is that our goal is to protect the health and well-being of every citizen that comes to the physical campus, every citizen. And the way we're going to do that is that we're going to be testing every person that comes back, mandatory for students, mandatory for faculty, and mandatory for staff. And we're going to do it multiple times this fall to help prevent and mitigate the risks associated with spreading the virus. We think that's the best approach for us. We're a large, almost little city here in College Park, and we've been working closely with our local city population as well to make sure that the city is going to be safe as well in the surrounding apartment complex and private homes. But our goal is to return to campus because 75% of our students who we surveyed want to come back to the physical campus, even if 100% of the courses are online. And from my perspective, we owe these students a world-class education. We owe it into the best way that we can. We've had our faculty working all summer on enhancing their instruction, doing things they've never done before. I actually think the courses that we're going to offer this fall will be some of the best courses we will have ever offered here at the University of Maryland in the form of either online, blended, or some in person. We have to do the in-person courses, as Ann was mentioning, because there are some critical skills that require hands-on engagement. For example, specific laboratories, specific studios for folks in the arts and in music. These are important one-on-one or one-on-a-few engagements that's really are best delivered in person in a safe way. Our goal is to keep our entire community safe and follow Prince George's County and where I'm at, Health Department's guidance, as well as the State of Maryland Secretary of Health guidance as well. So we are doing things in good faith, and we're communicating our next large communication to our community will probably be on Monday, August 3rd, with more details about the reopening plans and the testing environment that we'll have. So thank you for the opportunity for being here. I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Darryll. As might be expected with a panel from higher education, we're running a little over on the time frame, so maybe we could catch up by doing this. The next two questions were about your greatest challenge, the one that sticks out in your mind, and also your most noteworthy innovation or opportunity that you've seen in this situation. Let me start the conversation by just sharing mine quickly. In terms of challenges, the lines of communication and maintaining clear communications throughout this process has been a real challenge, and I've probably done more town hall meetings and videos in 2 months than I've done in the entire year. And then also tending to the mental and spiritual well-being of the UDC community. That has been a real challenge, especially for people who are isolated and living alone or had challenges even before the COVID. And so we spent a lot of time focusing on that. And then in terms of the innovation and opportunity, I really like this low risk learning center, low health risk learning center that we have with the individual pods and the digital projection that is really going to help people with connectivity and availability issues, have access. And then second, related to the mental and spiritual health, we actually started something called UDC Spirit Core, where it's a site of community where people can get wellness access, information, daily inspirational messages posted on the website, self-improvement, and those sorts of things, and it's worked really well for us. Now, having said that, maybe we could take a few minutes with Ann and then Darryll and then Paul to talk about those two questions, and then we'll wrap it up with a closure piece for a couple of minutes, and then we'll do Darryll, Paul, and Ann for that last piece, okay? So on this one, we have Ann starting first. Ann, you want to speak to that a bit?
Sure, thank you. And I'll try to catch us up as well. So I think I mentioned one of our biggest challenges, right, is that so many of our students are living on the financial margins already. And so that was something we knew going into the shift to remote. So we tried to address that as quickly as possible. We did a laptop loaner program for our students. As I mentioned, we turned our parking lots into Wi-Fi hotspots. But and our foundation, actually within 2 weeks of us shifting to remote, put out an emergency aid grant to our students. And that was well before the CARES Act funding came in. But I think that is one of the challenges that we continue to see persisting, and including the fact that our students' economic futures have changed so dramatically overnight that even when they go to file for financial aid, and just so your audience knows, if you file for financial aid for fall of 20, it's pulling your income from fall of 18. So your situation may be completely different. So we've really reached out to students to help them through that process. I think you hear a lot of these big numbers with the CARES Act, and so I want to make it very real for you. We received at Nova $10 million of emergency aid that we could deliver to our students. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but that is $130 for each one of our students. It does not go very far in Northern Virginia. And then in terms of the opportunities, when we saw that students were facing so many other challenges, we tried to think, what could we do as an institution to build that community, to build that connection? And we actually created internal to the institution a core of folks we called remote student support specialists. We call them RS3s. They were the ones who reached out. If a faculty member raised their hand and said, Ann's not been in my Zoom class, I don't know what's going on, the RS3s reached out to Ann. They connected Ann to services in the college and in the community that she might need to continue to be successful. So that's proven so successful that we're actually going to institutionalize that position and make it a regular part of Nova. So it was a real learning for us. Again, we were very focused on academic continuity, but to President Mason's comments, that sense of the social and emotional well-being of our students really has come to the fore.
Thank you. Darryll, challenges, opportunities, innovations?
Thank you, Ron. So our biggest challenge, I think, is for all of us, and I'll just speak for all of us, is to change the behaviors of 18 to 30-year-olds who are at our institutions. I think we are starting a huge campaign. It will involve videos by students to students. It will involve some other props in which we're going to use to communicate to our students. We're going to use some ambassadors to also get the message home, to change their behaviors to healthy behaviors. So that's one of the big challenges that we think we all have. The innovations that I can offer over this time has been really quite fascinating. I'll just share a couple of them. I'm an engineer, so this excited me the most, probably, of most of our innovations from our faculty, which is a couple of our faculty members decided to produce 10,000 bottles or 20,000 bottles of hand sanitizer as they're chemical engineers. So actually made it in their laboratories. They distributed it to first responders around the whole state of Maryland. It was well received during a time period in which hand sanitizer was very hard to find in your local food markets. And so that was really a cool thing that we offered as a service to the community. And then the second thing in terms of innovation academically was in the spring, we had a bunch of students who were in the music, who played the piano, who needed to be on campus to actually play the piano and actually practice and do their lesson plans. We actually shipped 16 grand pianos, Steinway grand pianos, to their homes and had them create a concert on a Zoom call just like this. And it was one of the most incredible things I ever seen, synchronized by timing, and them in their own homes playing a musical chord. it was really an incredible innovation that was part of this environment that we were in. So
That's impressive. Paul.
Thanks. I think we all face fiscal challenges. Georgetown is a needs-blind, full-need university for undergrads. So we don't let economics stand in the way of someone who deserves to come to Georgetown. And one could see in the situation where both the revenues are threatened and costs are increased because of all the extra things we have to do to protect the health and safety of our community. This is going to be a special challenge for all of us. But I think the real challenge to me is that we have to be careful of not becoming just managers and we continue to be leaders. We have to both run the sprint even as we run the marathon. We have to keep our schools and universities going and successful through this very challenging time, even as we continue to build for the future. And I think this is an interesting challenge. You know, to the first, I'm amazed at what my colleagues have done. So, of course, we have a wonderful facility at Georgetown called Candles, which trains our professors to do a good job online, synchronous, asynchronous, and high flex environments. How do you break classes up into little bits? How do you facilitate rich interactions among students who may be in class or maybe distant? But what really impressed me is the faculty have been holding workshops for each other, those more experienced in online pedagogies and the others who are learning from them, telling them the little tricks about testing and about engaging students who otherwise, you know, would feel disconnected. And, you know, those kind of innovations in response to the challenge are what really inspires me. And we're trying to be creative as well. You know, one of the most important things to the students is, of course, learning, but then also their networks, their careers, their experiences. So we're bringing alumni into classes. We're trying to make sure that every class, of course, has a professor, but also has an alumnus well-placed who can combine with the professor to bring in real-world experiences. We know people are missing their times on campus. So we're launching lifelong learning so that students can come back 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and take courses many years after they finish. We've been doing collab opportunities with this wonderful learning lab that is Washington, D.C. So with programs like Washington Business and the World. So this is a great time, a great opportunity for us to innovate even more, to look even more to the future. I just want to say one more thing. Of course, COVID has challenged us, but the idea that all my colleagues have raised that this is a challenging time in terms of race. And we all have to lean in against racial injustice. And this is happening simultaneously with the COVID crisis. And I've been so proud of how our faculty, students, staff have responded in terms of community forum, in terms of acting so that, you know, we have a program called the Pivot Program in collaboration with the city where we formerly incarcerated citizens come back, learn entrepreneurship, are placed in jobs. And this is inspiring to us. We help people, but we also grow ourselves. So this is a great chance. Yes, there are challenges, but there's a great chance to innovate and to create the organization for the ever-changing future.
Thank you, Paul. Panel, we're more or less back on schedule. For the last 6 minutes or so, maybe each of you, starting with Darryll and then going to Ann and Paul, could just make a couple of minutes of closing comments or remarks, and then we'll ask Naja to start to read off the questions from the audience. And I'll facilitate answering the questions, but I'll let you do the answering, okay? So starting with Darryll.
Thank you, Ron. So sort of just to get everyone to think, you know, more broadly, you know, I was speaking to the CEO of Merck, and he said that in the last 50 years, that new vaccines typically take on the average of 4 to 7 years. So why do you say that we are trying to return to campus and open up our campuses? because we don't know when there's going to be a vaccine. We really don't know. Now, it could come as early as January of 2021 or sometime in the spring of 2021, but the history doesn't really provide credence of that. And so we have to live with COVID-19. There was an op-ed written by one of Paul's faculty members who basically said, COVID-19 is here to stay. He also said, we owe it to all of our students to deliver the highest quality education that we can offer them so that they can have great careers at many of your firms and many of your corporations that are on this call. That is the mission of higher education. That is our job. We take it very seriously, and we want to deliver the best experiences in a safe way to our students. Thank you.
Ann?
Sure. So I'll go very local then. And one of the things that we're very concerned about at NOVA, but also at community colleges across the country, is that we know who our students are, and we know that our students don't take gap years. That if a student who is thinking about community college decides to go to college in July, or doesn't decide to go to college in July, they're not going to necessarily come back next year at the same time. Our students' lives are very, very complicated. And so we are very concerned about the level of uncertainty that students are facing, the financial challenges, as has been mentioned on this call, just the general, I think, reckoning that we're all coming to around the impact of structural and systemic racism, even on the decision-making of our students. And so what I would just put out there is everyone who's on this call has the opportunity to mentor someone, to influence the life of a young person who is on the fence about whether or not to move forward. Everyone who's on this call also recognizes that the pathway to the future lies in higher education. It doesn't need to be a graduate degree or even a four-year degree. Sometimes it's a certificate, but 99% of the jobs out there will require some post-secondary credential. And I am very concerned that we have many young people in our communities who right now are thinking, no, I'll just put off college. I don't need to think about this right now. And the challenge is what that means is a very long horizon of a lack of economic opportunity. So I would just encourage everyone to really mentor those folks in your lives and help them understand how they can afford college, how they should be thinking about college, even in this time post-pandemic.
And Paul.
Thanks. Something that's hit me during this challenging time is that even when fiscal resources may be limited, we have the best resource still available. We just have to tap into it. And that really is our community, our students, our faculty, our staff, our alumni, our broader base in wonderful Washington, DC. And if we can inspire people to look after each other, to help each other, to make that extra sacrifice, to support each other, there's amazing things we can do and we have been able to do. So I spend a lot of my time just talking to students, talking to faculty, keeping spirits up, pointing to possibilities. And they're doing wonderful things. You know, many of your students and ours were disappointed that we couldn't have graduations. But for instance, our MBAs did this wonderful Oscars ceremony and, you know, had virtual awards. And people were absolutely thrilled. They were overflowing. We have staff who are doing virtual babysitting, looking after each other. We have students engaged in all sorts of different ways with food banks. And, you know, we have faculty who've taken advantage of this COVID time to do research that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do on human attitudes. And so there's so much opportunity. We just have to know that we are incredible as human beings, as individuals, and as a community. And we have to tap into that continuously. We can get through, we can create a better school, a better university, and a better world.
Thank you, Paul. Inspiring words. Now we're going to move to the Q&A. Maybe we could manage it this way. Some questions, I took a peek, are going to be institution specific. And when that is the case, then the president or dean can answer that question. If it's a general question and someone has a desire to answer it, please just raise your hand. I can see you in the camera, and we'll go to the hand that's raised first. Having said that, Naja's going to read the questions, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. And we have quite a few questions already submitted, but please feel free to continue sending those questions through the Q&A feature. First question, what 1 to 2 things does this region need to do to strengthen and accelerate the talent pipeline?
No hands? I'll answer it. Okay, nobody, no hands. Well, let me give it a shot as facilitator. I believe that some of the work we're doing at UDC, not to put in a plug, but to be able to see the needs of the DMV from a talent perspective, and then design seamless pipelines from the entry level all the way up through the bachelor's or above, but understanding that that degrees alone are not the only credentials that are in that pipeline. And so a lot more competency-based credentialing on and off ramps so that students can pause at different levels of the pipeline opportunities. But at the end of the day, it really does require us to think through the entire pipeline. And also, I think, on a regional basis, understand what institutions have what strengths and be able to look across the region to be able to make sure that those pipelines are completely built out. Anybody else, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Many of our students don't come from the Washington, D.C. area, but they grow to learn about it and love the Washington, D.C. area. So I think something very important for a school like mine is from very early on to embrace Washington, D.C. in every way. We have our embassies, we have our politicians, God bless them. We have technology, we have everything possible. If every single student coming to one of our schools engaged in a project, it could be a socially oriented project, it could be a business, it could be an international project within Washington, D.C., we'd create a strong pipeline, not just of talent, but of knowledge, of networks, of associations that could benefit the region richly now and for years to come. And so I'm trying to make sure every one of our students is heavily engaged in different ways in Washington, D.C.
Darryll?
So we have, most of our students are engaged in many strategic partnerships with many of the government entities. Public Policy School has internships downtown in many of the different agencies. We have students from the STEM side who are partnered with all the different firms like Amazon and others on the Northern Virginia corridor, as well as the biotechnology corridor here in the state of Maryland. We have exciting internships opportunities that are both virtual, even virtual now, as in person. They still kept the connectedness to our students, so we're very excited about that. And our students, like I said earlier, they tend to get placed somewhere in the DMV region. And so these partnerships that involve projects, as Paul mentioned, or internship opportunities, or virtual internship opportunities are still very important to our schools and to our institutions to actually provide the journey to a long-term career in the community.
And I'll just throw in there, since I am part of the Connected DMV Strategic Renewal Group that's looking at the post-pandemic economy in our region, I think one of the great benefits that is in front of us is to really think of ourselves more practically as a region. You've heard that over and over again. I mean, we are certainly we're in different states or in DC, but there is such a fluidity across those borders that are right now geographic, that I think there is much more that we could do to facilitate co-enrollment, to go across some of these boundaries, to really think of ourselves as that connected DMV.
Okay, next question, Naja.
Are you adapting any of your offerings to quickly provide workers with new skills to encourage hiring? And how are you working with industries and companies?
Ann?
So I'll jump out there because workforce is a large part of what we do. So we have, I'll give just a couple of examples. One is that we use some of our federal stimulus dollars that were institutional to provide up to 6 college credit hours to rising or graduating high school seniors this summer. And embedded in that was a cloud computing pathway, because we were recognizing that those students really, to avoid summer melt and get them on these career pathways. So we started early. The other thing has been mentioned is that many of our internships and even our apprenticeships have gone virtual. And then we've been convening industry sector roundtables to learn from, for example, folks in healthcare. What are the skill sets right now that their existing workforce may not have that we could assist in providing? And then, of course, we're talking with them about the future. What does the future look post-pandemic, whether it's an IT sector discussion, a trades discussion, a healthcare discussion, so that we can make sure that we have that programming in place. I just want to put in a plug for two programs. One is that Virginia has what's called the Fast Forward program, and students who are in these direct to workforce certificates only pay a third of the cost. The other 2/3 is covered by the state. And then there's a brand new foundation that just grew out of Glenn Youngking's work at the Carlisle Group that is called Virginia Ready. And so individuals who are in those Fast Forward certificate programs beginning in August will also qualify for additional scholarship dollars to help them in the cost of living, recognizing that many of them have lost their jobs recently or in a very different financial situation. So I think on all levels, there's ways of rethinking what we're doing in workforce.
Darryll?
And similarly, along the lines of credentialing and certificate programs, we created a artificial intelligence minor and certificate program for the region so that our students could immediately get the skills, and not from the STEM disciplines, but from other disciplines in social science and in behavioral science. And so that they could go into other jobs that are in the region, especially those obviously in the corridor of technology, but also other jobs that involve data, either for the federal government or other agencies that support the federal government. And so, our artificial intelligence, cybersecurity certificate, and credentialing programs. Even to retool some of the folks who are more hands-on, we've created a CAD credentialing program for really 3D printing and advanced manufacturing for those kinds of employees who would exit the University of Maryland.
And Paul?
So one of the challenges we have is the world is moving so fast. And so our challenge is, how do we train the workforce for tomorrow, which we can't fully see or fully understand? The second challenge in academia is too often we have our engineering school and we have our business school and we have our policy schools. And yet most of the world's challenges are interdisciplinary, really, and require people with different levels of expertise to come and work together. So we have two challenges, which I think we're trying to deal with well. One is, can we introduce new subject matter, not just to a narrow set of people, but to everyone? Do we have a sustainability certificate? We have a big initiative in the business school. Do we have business analytics so that everyone can raise that? So we have initiative on that, or business and global affairs. But what I really like is we're working in every case with other schools within our university to collaborate, because for instance, on our sustainability, we're working with the Georgetown Environmental Institute, which is mostly science-based. And here we are business and economics-based. And it's not an easy marriage. Sometimes it's challenging, but we have to find common ground, find how we can really train people. So I think the challenge for academia to train people so that they can actually make a difference in the world, tackle some of the world's biggest problems, is to work across fields and keep our eye on the future. So we teach people what they need to know, not just what we are comfortable with.
And just to close it out, we're focused at UDC on those intermediate competency credentials in between formal degrees. Naja, next question.
Sure. I'd like to hear what each university is planning in terms of collecting and analyzing contact tracing and testing data from their students to ensure their campus populations stay infection-free. Is there a regional approach that all the universities in the DMV could take?
I think I saw Darryl's hand, yes.
So we have been testing actually all summer long to get ready for the fall. I think we've now done about 7 different tests. Our largest test involved 1,400 people, of which 15 ended up testing positive. That's a 1% positivity rate, which is kind of what we're looking for when we go into the fall. And we've been doing this all with the guidance of public health officials. One of the things that we think is a good step for all universities is to do the following. We're asking our students to pre-populate a list of people that they hang around with, their friends, their family, people they're going to hang around when they come back. So that if they do that prior to being tested, then we'll be able to do what we are calling initially contact identification. And then we pass that information on to the state of Maryland, which they actually do the official contact tracing. So we don't use the term contact tracing, we use contact identification. But if you pre-populate it for faculty and staff, then it gets a head start on doing the contact tracing. And we found that, because we've already done it this summer, that it really accelerates the ability to make sure that the virus doesn't spread. And that's really important. So that's, I think, an innovation that I haven't heard many schools talk about, but we've been trying to do it at our institution. The public health officials are in charge with contact tracing, not the institution. So you should know that. We can only identify people, pass that on to the state, and then they are allowed to do the full contact tracing.
If there are no other answers, I think we've run out of time for questions. Let me thank the panel. I know I learned a great deal from listening to you. I hope it was useful to the audience. And now we will, and thank you for the opportunity, Board of Trade. You're doing a lot of the work that is going to help this region come back when the time is right. Jack, let me hand it back over to you, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ron. And thank you, everybody. Ann and Darryl and Paul, thank you for joining us this morning and sharing those insights. We have some significant challenges, but also some real opportunities ahead. So looking forward to that. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you, because it's going to take all of us working together to figure this out and to get through it. So with that, I wish everyone a good day. I want to thank everybody who joined us today. Had really good participation, and I wish everyone well. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Great. Thank you very much. Okay.